In 2003, a man in Portland, Oregon listed a wine cabinet for sale on eBay. The listing was detailed and well written. It described the cabinet as formerly owned by a Holocaust survivor and explained that since purchasing it at an estate sale, the seller had experienced recurring nightmares, health problems, and what he described as an inexplicable smell that had no identifiable source. He'd then given the cabinet to his mother as a birthday present. She had a stroke the same day. The cabinet sold. Then it sold again. And again. Each owner reportedly described the same symptoms: nightmares, the smell, shadow figures in peripheral vision. The cabinet passed through several hands, acquired the name the Dybbuk Box, and inspired a major studio horror film. In 2021, the man who wrote the original eBay listing said he'd made the whole thing up. Then again, the man has never been entirely clear about anything. The box is still in a museum. A Dybbuk, in Jewish mystical tradition, is a malicious spirit, specifically the dislocated soul of a dead person that attaches itself to a living host. The concept appears in Kabbalistic literature and in Jewish folklore, particularly from the 16th and 17th centuries. The Dybbuk isn't a ghost in the Western sense. It doesn't haunt a location. It inhabits a person, speaks through them, and must be exorcised through specific rabbinical ritual. It has no interest in wine cabinets. A Dybbuk box. The concept of a container that holds or traps such a spirit has no established precedent in Jewish religious tradition. Rabbinical scholars have noted that the idea of binding a Dybbuk to an object, rather than a person, doesn't appear in classical Kabbalistic texts. The term Dybbuk box was coined, by available evidence, by the man who sold the wine cabinet on eBay. It didn't exist before him. Rabbinical scholars would later be consulted about it anyway. The Dybbuk tradition has its own history of case files. Around 1570, Rabbi Isaac Luria is reported to have performed an exorcism in Safed, in Ottoman Palestine, driving a spirit from a woman who'd begun speaking in a male voice and claiming to be a dead sinner seeking repair for his soul. 17th century Polish exorcism accounts describe Dybbuks being commanded to exit through a toe, the limb a person could best afford to lose. The point is, the tradition is specific. A Dybbuk enters a person. It's removed from a person. A Dybbuk box is a category error, like a werewolf aquarium. The thing doesn't go in there. Kevin Mannis was a furniture refinisher and writer in Portland, Oregon. In 2003, he purchased the wine cabinet at an estate sale. According to his original account, the estate belonged to a woman identified as a Holocaust survivor who'd immigrated to the United States after World War II. Her granddaughter told him at the sale that the cabinet had been important to her grandmother and should never be opened. Of course, Mannis opened it. By his account, inside he found 2 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair bound with cord, a lock of dark brown hair bound with cord, a small stone engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a dried rosebud, a gold wine goblet, and 2 cast iron candlestick holders with octopus-like legs. He left the cabinet at his furniture refinishing shop. By Mannis's account, his shop assistant called him, in tears, to report that the security gate had been locked from the inside, the lights were out, and she could hear someone cursing and breaking glass in the shop. When Mannis arrived, he said, the shop was empty. Several light bulbs had shattered. A strong, unidentifiable odor, later described as cat urine mixed with jasmine, permeated the space. Over the following months, Mannis gave the cabinet away multiple times. Each recipient returned it, reporting the same cluster of symptoms: vivid nightmares featuring a cackling old woman, an oppressive sense of dread, and the smell. One recipient left it on his doorstep with a note reading, according to Mannis, "This has a bad darkness." He gave the cabinet to his mother as a birthday present. According to Mannis, on the day she received it, she suffered a stroke that left her partially paralyzed. She couldn't speak. Using her left hand, she spelled out letters on a sheet of paper. The letters, Mannis reported, spelled hate gift. Mannis eventually listed the cabinet on eBay with a lengthy description of its history and effects. The listing was written in a compelling narrative style. Detailed, atmospheric, personal. It read less like a product description and more like a short story. The listing went viral by 2003 internet standards. The cabinet sold. The listing itself deserves attention as a piece of writing. It ran over 1,000 words. It had pacing, a 3-act structure, and stakes that escalated from a panicked employee to a mother's stroke. eBay in 2003 didn't have a creative writing section. The product description field served just fine. Manus would prove a more committed novelist than memoirist. The bidding reflected the narrative's pull. The cabinet reportedly sold for around $140, unusual for a second-hand wine cabinet with no particular antique value. It would resell months later for twice that. People weren't bidding on furniture. They were bidding on a story, and each subsequent resale added a chapter. The product description grew like a chain letter. By the time Haxton acquired it, the listing had become a collaborative document, a ghost story written by its own audience. The next documented owner, a college student identified in some accounts as Yosef Nietzsche, resold the cabinet on eBay, adding his own experiences to the listing. The legend compounded. The cabinet eventually reached Jason Haxton, the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine at A.T. Still University in Kirksville, Missouri. Haxton was, by training and profession, a museum curator, a person whose job is, in essence, to decide what is real and what is not. He acquired the box, studied it, and reported experiencing the same symptoms: nightmares, health problems, including hives and what he described as strange bleeding from the eyes, and a general sense of malevolence associated with the object. The verdict, from the man whose job is to render appraisals, was hedged. The eye bleeding is worth pausing on. Most of the reported symptoms, nightmares, dread, unexplained odors, are subjective. Bleeding from the eyes is different. It's visible. It's documentable. It's also, in medical literature, rare but not unheard of, a condition called hemolacria, with documented causes ranging from physical injury and conjunctival irritation to certain hormonal and bacterial factors. Haxton reported it. He didn't, to public knowledge, provide ophthalmological records. It's the most striking claim in the entire chain of ownership, and the least verified. Haxton wrote a book, The Dybbuk Box, published in 2011. He consulted with rabbinical scholars about the object. He eventually sealed the box according to procedures recommended by those scholars and stored it. He described himself as unsettled by the experience, but declined to make definitive claims about the box's nature. The box inspired the 2012 horror film The Possession, produced by Sam Raimi's Ghost House Pictures and distributed by Lionsgate. The film made over $85 million worldwide on a budget of $14. A wine cabinet from a Portland estate sale generated a roughly 6-to-1 budget return. Zach Bagans acquired the box for his haunted museum in Las Vegas, reportedly paying an undisclosed sum, though Haxton has described it as a donation, and put it on display when the museum opened in 2017. The box is displayed behind glass. Visitors are warned. The warning is part of the experience. Some visitors report feeling unwell near the exhibit. The museum charges admission. In July 2021, Kevin Manus gave an interview to the magazine Input, in which he stated that the original eBay listing was a creative writing exercise. He'd made it up. Not just the nightmares and the smell. The origin story, too. According to Manus's fuller admissions, he purchased the wine cabinet at a yard sale, placed the contents inside himself, and carved the Hebrew engravings. He described himself as a writer using eBay as a storytelling platform. The wine cabinet was real. Everything else was fiction. The confession should have ended the story. It didn't, for 2 reasons. First, it didn't arrive cleanly. Manus told an interviewer in 2021 that the story was fiction. Then, in subsequent conversations, he softened the claim, suggesting parts were embellished, not invented. Then he reaffirmed it was fiction. Then he hedged again. He's a man who confessed to a hoax and then couldn't commit to the confession. Hedging may be his only consistent trait. The Holocaust survivor deserves her own beat. She didn't exist. Manus invented a survivor, gave her a granddaughter, and used that invented suffering to sell a wine cabinet on the internet. Second, the subsequent owners, the college student Haxton and others, reported their experiences independently of one another. Either they were continuing the fabrication, consciously or unconsciously, experiencing genuine phenomena triggered by suggestion, or experiencing something unrelated that happened to match the story. The original story may be fiction, but fiction that generates real experiences, or real reports of experiences, in subsequent owners occupies a strange category. The box has become a test of whether a story told well enough about an object can make the object behave as if the story were true. The skeptical explanation is unusually tidy for this type of case. Kevin Manus, by his own admission, wrote a piece of fiction and posted it on eBay. The subsequent owners may have been primed by the story to interpret normal phenomena, bad dreams, coincidental illness, drafts carrying unusual smells, as supernatural. The clustering of symptoms across owners is consistent with the nocebo effect, in which expectation of harm produces the experience of harm. Every owner had read the listing before taking possession. Every owner knew what symptoms to expect. The nocebo effect isn't metaphorical. It's one of the most replicated findings in clinical research. In drug trials, patients given inert sugar pills who are warned about side effects reliably develop those side effects: nausea, headaches, fatigue, skin rashes. In one well-documented case, a man who believed he'd overdosed on placebo pills was admitted to the emergency room with dangerously low blood pressure. He was told the pills were sugar. His blood pressure returned to normal within 15 minutes. Tell someone an object will give them nightmares, and their brain, accommodating as ever, gets to work. This explanation is elegant. It may even be correct. What it doesn't fully address is the specificity and consistency of the reported experiences across owners who weren't in contact with each other. And Haxton, a trained museum professional, whose health symptoms included phenomena, eye bleeding, that aren't standard nocebo responses. Haxton didn't simply have bad dreams. He reported medical symptoms and described documenting them. The deeper question is whether the box matters at all, or whether the story is the haunting. Manus created a narrative. The narrative propagated. It generated experiences. A book, a film, a museum exhibit, a tourism economy. People pay to stand near it and feel afraid. The fear is the product. Whether the fear originates in the box or in the story about the box is, functionally, irrelevant to the people feeling it. A haunted object that may not be haunted, but acts haunted because people believe it's haunted, is indistinguishable from a haunted object. The box has earned its case either way. The Dybbuk Box is in Las Vegas now. It sits behind glass in Zach Bagans' haunted museum on East Charleston Boulevard, between other artifacts of alleged supernatural provenance. Visitors line up. The lights are dim. The air conditioning hums. Kevin Manus lives in Portland. He may have written a short story on eBay 20 years ago, or he may have sold a genuinely haunted wine cabinet and then tried to unsay it. He has, characteristically, declined to be entirely clear on the matter. The box is still in the museum. Nobody's opened it recently. Nobody seems to want to.